Well, good morning. I am enjoying my summer morning here in my garden, having a cup of coffee and contemplating another class. And I am so inspired by the flowers that I planted in my garden in some pots. And I thought, let's do a flower class. I will show you how to paint some beautiful late summer flowers, and I hope you'll join me. Grab your brushes, grab your paints, and let's head into the studio.
All right, so I'm back in the studio and I have played around a little bit with the inspiration from my garden and have decided that I think I will show you how to paint the Echinacea or coneflowers. I think they're just so gorgeous. It's a type of a daisy, and I've just played around a little bit and done some sketches to kind of familiarize myself with the flower, and did a few in my little sketchbook here with pen and ink. I haven't put color on the little sketches yet. And here I have, then from what I've worked out here, I've come up with a little drawing, and I've just changed a few things, because when I looked at the composition that I had here, which is the one I want to work on with you, there's a couple of things I didn't like. This one, you know, it was an unbroken line, and that's, you know, it's not so good to have that in paintings. That's composition and design. It's like a freeway for your eyes, so you just kind of zoom in. So it's better to have it broken up a little bit. And then I noticed that these three flowers, they are on the same slant. That's also not so good, even though it might be like that out in my flower bed or in my pots out there, but that doesn't mean that's how I should paint it. So after having looked at that, and you can see here, I blow it up, and so you can see what I'm talking about. See this unbroken line there? So your eyes zoom in there, and then you have this stem and this stem, and actually this stem, they're all going in the exact same direction. So that I wanted to change. And so in my drawing here, I don't know if you can see it, I broke up this line, so I let this stem break up that stem. So I put that on top. And then I also moved the leaf up, so it kind of interrupted these two stems, and I put the flower head here, so that also interrupted that stem, and leaf here is interrupting that stem. And then this is on a slant, and then I had this one on a slant, so that one I straightened up a little bit so it's not parallel, and then this one is on a slight slant, so they're all different. That's what I wanted to do. So that's the composition we're going to be working on, and I think I want to incorporate, because I really like to work with pen and ink sometimes, so I think this would be a good composition to use a pen and ink. So let's just take a look at the materials. So I have an 8x10 sheet of Arches cold pressed watercolor here, and this is 140 pounds, so it's a light, for me, lighter weight. I often work on 300 pounds, but you know, we're going to go with the 140 this time. And then I'm going to use my Micron pen, and I have not decided yet, should I use the black one? I have a 0.3 here. I think I might go with that one. Black pen would be nice. This one is a 0.1 and it's in a sepia. I think I like the black better for flowers. So let's do that. And you can choose, you know, not to go with a pen if you don't want to, or if you have a different pen, doesn't matter. So that's what we're going to be using. Of course, I have my palette ready, and it's my standard palette where I have cobalt blue, French ultramarine blue, Antwerp blue, peacock blue, indigo, transparent yellow, quinacridone gold, burnt sienna, quinacridone red, permanent rose, and then I have that opera rose, and then I have permanent magenta. I just got a new color from Daniel Smith, Aussie Red Gold, and I feel that would maybe be a good color to add to my standard palette here. So I'm going to put a little bit of the Aussie Red Gold, which is kind of like a very bright orangey color, warm color. I think that'll go really well with the color scheme I'm thinking. Let's try that out. And if you have, if you have an orange, different orange, or maybe New Gamboge would work, or just a quinacridone gold, which I already have on here. I just feel like playing with a new color also. So I'm gonna add that. And I have these little porcelain bowls, I guess they are, porcelain bowls that I got from my niece Katja for my birthday. And I like to use those when I need bigger puddles of color, or as here when I need to just add on a color or two that I don't have on my palette. And I like to keep my mixing areas available for mixing. So let's try that out. I have a variety of round brushes. I like to use round brushes most of the time when I paint flowers. And then I have a flat wash brush. This one is just 1 inch, but I think that'll be a good one for just to start. And then I have my good old dagger brush that I like to always have on hand. And then the only other brush I might use at some point is a rigger brush. I have 2 different ones here, a little bit fatter one and skinnier one. So that's probably it on the brushes. And I'm thinking I want to use a little bit of masking fluid. I can use my PBO high precision marker pen. That would work well for this here. And then of course, if we're using the masking fluid, I like to use a rubber cement eraser to pick up masking fluid. I might use my trusted credit card that I like to cut across like this. And then I have that pointy tip there, and I have round tips, and then I have the sides and stuff. So I'm not sure. We'll see how it goes. Kneaded eraser and number 2 pencil to do a light sketch. So those are the materials. And then of course, like to have my 2 jars of water. I like to have tissue paper, Kleenex, and I like to have my water control station, which is old terry cloth, and then some paper towel on top. And I think that's it. So go grab your materials and get yourself set up, and then we'll get started. So I already had my sketch put on my watercolor paper, and now I'm going to go in and put my ink lines on, and I do them very light. And this is, kind of like an extra chance to fix things that you see in your sketch that you don't like, because then we're going to erase the pencil lines afterwards. So I'm going to do that, and that's not going to be all that interesting to watch. So I'm going to do that off camera so we can get to the painting part. So you can see I got my pen lines in, and I kept them very light and a little sketchy. And then the next job is I want to take my kneaded eraser, and make sure you only use a kneaded eraser on your watercolor paper. And then I'm just going to gently rub across my drawing here and pick up the graphite from the light pencil sketch I've done. And then we're ready to paint. So I got the pencil lines off, and before I put any paint on, I want to get the little bit of masking fluid on the stamens. just a few of them. And I'm going to do it fairly sparse, I guess it is. Just a few, and maybe a few in here. And I'm thinking about what colors I want to make my flowers. I don't feel obligated to do it exactly how, you know, it is out in my garden. I'm going to mix it up the way I feel like doing it. That's how I always paint. So I don't know, maybe we'll put a few inside these little, I have these two that are buds that are opening. So just a little bit, and then that'll dry in no time. And while that dries, we can mix our background color. So I sprayed my colors, and let's get some cobalt blue. That's a great color for the background. I'm thinking, you know, my coneflowers here, I want to do them kind of golden, and then I'm thinking kind of like a purpley color, a warm purple, kind of a permanent magenta like. So here's a nice puddle of cobalt blue. And cobalt blue, you know, it's so easy to lift it, should it get into places where it didn't belong. So that's why, you know, that's a nice forgiving color to use for a background, because I'm going to do the background obviously wet into wet. And I'd like to perk it up a little bit. So I'm going to put some of that peacock, which is a much more turquoisey color, a much brighter color. Let's put some of that over here. That would make for a nice late summer sky. And then we're good to go with that. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to, since I'm painting under 140 pounds, and I'm not planning on taping it down, because I don't know, for some reason I'm not, you know, I'm not too crazy about that. So I'm going to spray the back of the painting so that it doesn't buckle on me too much. So I just use my spray bottle for that. There. And then I'm going to flip it over. And then I'm going to grab my wash brush, 1 inch. It holds a lot of water. And I'm not going to worry about the stems, but I'm going to try and avoid, well actually I'm not, I'm just going to paint water over the whole thing. And then with the paint I'm going to try and avoid the flower heads. That's going to be much easier. Let's not complicate things here. And can you see, because I wet the back, see how nice and flat it's lying? And it's like it's sucking to the, sticking to my board here. I think I might have not gotten enough on that corner. All right, so what I can do is I can kind of dab out some of the water out of the stamen area and some of the petals here. There. And then I'm just going to stay with a big old brush. I think I'll just use my wash brush, why not? And I'm going to go in from the top, get some of that cobalt, mainly the cobalt. I start with the cobalt and then we go from there. Go down. Don't mind if you get over the stem. That might be even a benefit. And the leaves, the same thing. So let's just go down here. And we can just put a little bit down here. And there we have it. And then, before anything dries on me, let me go in and load my brush up again. Now I'm going to put some of that peacock on my brush and get some of that in. There we go. And I think I could use a little bit more of that actually. you know, because it's wet into wet, it's going to dry a lot lighter than what it looks. And there we have that. And then let's just let that settle in just a little bit. And in the meantime, I can go in again if I feel the need to lift out just a little bit from the flowers. Don't really have too many problem areas here. It's behaving itself pretty well. There. And then we need to get some color on the bottom too. And I think I'm going to go in with some more of the cobalt blue. And then let's use a little bit of that Aussie gold and just get some of that color in here at the bottom, darken things up a little bit. And I haven't mixed it 100%, so there will be some little Aussie gold stuff. And here I'm using my dagger brush and I'm doing some strokes up here again, trying to avoid hitting the heads of the flowers, but I wouldn't mind getting a little bit of that color up here because, you know, there's vegetation behind these flowers and stuff, so it wouldn't hurt getting a little bit of that going on. And darken a little bit here and there, behind here. And let's get a little bit of our French ultramarine blue there. And get a little bit more of that Aussie gold in. Maybe a little bit more. And this gets some grassy looking things up through here. And again, so I'm, you know, kind of lifting up my brush a little bit. And as the paper is drying, some of these little shapes, they're going to hold a little bit more. But I want everything nice and fussy out here, obviously, because, you know, we don't want to take away from the main stars of the show, which are of course our coneflowers. Echinacea, they are called also in Latin, I guess, and they're a type of a daisy. I had to look it up online, how to pronounce Echinacea, because I wasn't sure. So there, I think this is good. Let me take a look. Yeah, don't want too much light down here, so I'm just gonna, there. I like that. So far, I think it's pretty okay. And then see, while I wasn't looking, this cobalt blue is sneaking in here. This is the focal flower. So I want that one especially bright. That one can have a little bit. So let's just lift that out. I think the others are going to be just fine. There we have it. Okay, so now I need to let it dry. I don't like to use a hairdryer, and especially I have a little bit of masking fluid. I don't have much, but I'm just not a fan of the hairdryer. So we are just going to let that dry, and then it's a good time to take a little break. Alright, so everything is completely dry. It buckled a little bit, but not too much. And now we're going to build up the layers in those centers of the coneflowers. What we're going to do is we are going to use masking fluid. In between we put very light layers on, so we already put some masking fluid on. So we are saving a little bit of white, and now we're going to be saving the next lightest color, so that would be a very light transparent yellow, is what I'm thinking I want to do here. And just very light, so lots of water. And I'm just going to dab it in there. And it has to dry. Even take out a little bit here. I want my light to come from the right top side there, so I'm going to lift out a little bit there. I'm going to put some water in here, and I'm putting quite a bit of water in. I want the yellow to really flow out, and put that in. That's really the interesting part of these flowers. I find these centers with the stamens. Let's lift on it a little bit there. And we're going to do a little bit in here too. Just a little bit, and in here, just a little bit. We can just see a little bit of these centers on the buds, and then on this one here, we're also going to put a little bit in there. And then we need to let this dry. But there you can see, that was easy. So my first coat of that transparent yellow has dried. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my masking pen again and put some more of the little dots and markings on the centers of the flowers. And then I'm going to put on a layer of the Aussie red gold color, and then I let that dry and put another layer of masking fluid. And so I'm going to build up the layers that way, and the texture on the little centers here. So let's do the second. Well, it's actually, yeah, the second coat. Get this thing going. Yeah, it's going. And so little lines, and make sure that you do them in the right direction, and because they're going to show up, and that's the whole point, of course. And so I do more dotty. Let me see if I can zoom in so you can see better. It's not that easy to see, I don't think, on the camera, but I do more like dot, 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 like right at the center here, because there, it's for shortened view of those stamens. And then as I go out, I do a little bit more lines, and you can look at some of the reference photos, and you can see like they have a directional flow to them. So see here, that looks more like dots, and then as you go up and further out on the edges, it becomes more little lines. So anyway, that's what I'm keeping in mind, because I want to have them read right once I take all this off, and hopefully not have to do too much fixing. That's my hope. We'll see how it goes, right? And some more of these dots here, and then the little lines. So I've used this method before. It's been a while, but I painted artichokes. It's a long time ago now, and I used this method for the, those hairs in the middle of the artichoke bloom, those artichoke blooms that I painted. So they have those purpley little spiky things. I'll show you a picture here. You can see what I'm talking about. And there I use that method for those little hairs. And I thought that worked like a charm. And so let's get here in these little, oops, better zoom out again. In these little buds of the flowers, I'll just dot. And this one will also mainly be dots, a little bit of lines, but mainly dots. Okay, I think that's good. And then we'll let that dry. And while we build this up, we can start painting the stems and the leaves on these coneflowers. Okay, so my masking fluid is dry, so I'm just going to put some of this Aussie red gold on the, I think it's very concentrated, so I think I want to, it's all a matter of, you know, it's a matter of getting these layers on not too solid, because the whole idea is, you know, to build up these cones. A bit more water on here. There we go. A bit darker on this side possibly. Same here. And then let me rinse it out, because, you know, I don't really want too hard of a line. And the same here, don't really want too hard of a line down here, because I don't know exactly how we're going to do this attaching of those. And lift out maybe a little bit there. And I think before it dries on me, I'm going to grab a little bit of a smaller brush and put a little bit of that on. And then I'm just going to try and do some little fuzzies around here before it's completely dry, just like that. Just pulling it out a little bit. Yeah. And just carry on down here. And then I'm going to put a little bit more water on it and just kind of drag it out like that. And then we have these here. And now here in here I want to be a little careful that now I'm painting around those front petals, because they're going to be a different color if nothing else, and probably also lighter. So you can see like that. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So there's that. And then we're going to let that dry, and in the meantime we're going to start on the stems. So we're going to go green now. So the Aussie red gold has dried. And then I put on another coat of the masking fluid, same pattern, dots and little lines in the direction of the stamens on the centers of the flowers. And so then the masking fluid has to dry again, and I got my puddles ready for our stems. So I have my transparent yellow, I have 2 puddles of it here. And then I have Antwerp blue, 2 puddles, and French ultramarine blue, 2 puddles, and then I have a puddle here of quinacridone red, because when I look at the stems, there's definitely some red tones in the stems too, in some of them. So I want to be able to kind of run that in for a little interest. And let's see here, let's start with this stem out here. That's a nice little one. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of water inside the stem, and you can see a little bit of it up under the head of the bud. And for right now, I'm just going to do some water in the stem. And I'm staying within the lines. And then we have our light coming from here. Let's put a little arrow so don't forget. There. And so I'm going to start with a little bit of yellow. Transparent yellow. Run it up here and there. And just run it all the way down, and I'm putting it on mainly on the light side of the stem, which would be, you know, the right side. So there's that. And now I'm not even going to rinse out my brush. I am going to dip it into some of the French ultramarine blue and put it up underneath here. So it mixes and mingles with the yellow. And I want it quite dark up there. Put some more blue on, because these little sepals, they're also green. And so they're going to be a lighter green than this. So I need to have the one green I have here underneath really dark. I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to run in extra French ultramarine blue, and then I'm going to pull it down here, and now I'm going to take some of all that blue off, put a little bit of yellow back in my brush, and then I'm just going to drag my brush down before things dry on me. And I think I might put a little tiny bit of Antwerp blue on also, and I'm going to put that on here on the dark side of the stem. And I make sure I get all this on back to a little bit of French ultramarine blue. I want to have that stem darker down here. And it'll be a little darker up here. Of course that bud is going to cast a shadow. Rinse out my brush. Take a look at what I got. I dabbed off the water, and I'm going to just dip the tip in a little bit on of the transparent yellow to just kind of liven it up a little bit on that side here. There. So I hope you can see. That makes for a pretty interesting stem. It's out, it's not like focal area or anything like that. We still want to have a little bit of interest. And I think I might just dip my tip in a little bit of the quinacridone red and just run that in a couple of places. Just like that. Just for fun. And you don't have to do that if you don't want to. I just like it. It just livens it up a little bit. Drag it a little bit. And then here, I want to have it a little bit darker down here on this. Just strengthening the color a couple of places. But I think it's pretty okay. This, there, just fixing the shapes. So there we have our first stem. And that's how I'm going to paint all the stems, just with a little variation. So if you're painting along, you can get your puddles ready, and then we'll continue painting the stems and then the leaves. So my masking fluid has dried on the cones there in the middle, and I think the next color I'll put on is, I'm going to put a little bit of the quinacridone red on, build up the color that way. So just get that on. I'm going to do that on all of them. And while I put it on, I will pull out some little stamens with the red also, just so it's not just a hard-edged even blob. And the brush I grabbed here is number 12, but it has a really nice tip, so it's not that hard to do that. Just have to turn it upside down because it's easier to do these things this way. And let's do a little bit in here. And now, you know, we're layering it so much, so you don't want to use a stiff brush. You use a nice soft brush for this and just kind of dab it on, because we don't want the colors we already put on underneath to start lifting. That wouldn't be so good. And get a little bit in here on the little buds that are opening up. And then once this is dry, we're going to put on yet another little bit of masking fluid in the same manner we have done the whole time. And then I think we'll do one more layer, and I think we're going to use permanent magenta for that. Make them nice and dark, and then we'll see what it looks like and see if we need to darken even more with possibly a blue. I don't know. We'll see what we think. I don't know if I did it right here. There. Okay. I think that'll do. Dab in a little bit more here. Alrighty. Then we can continue with the stems. So now that the last coat of watercolor paint, the quinacridone red that I put on top of here, has dried, and I did not put red on top of these two here because I think I want to leave them that color, or maybe give them a little bit of green later on. I'm not quite sure, but I put some more masking fluid on all of them, and I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to put the last color on the stamens when I have painted the petals, because I think I want to see what the petals look like before I decide exactly on what color they're going to end up being. So we'll continue with the stems, and I'll paint in a couple more so you can see it. So again, first clean water inside. I don't go all the way out to the edges. And then I take some of my transparent yellow on my brush, dab it a little bit on the water control station, which is my paper towel on top of the terry cloth. And I paint the yellow in from the sunny side of the stem, which is the right side in this case. I don't even rinse my brush off, but I dab it a little bit on my paper towel, and then I'm going to put a little bit of the French ultramarine blue on the tip of my brush. I'm not dipping like the whole brush in. Back to the water control station just to make sure I don't have so much on my brush that I'm going to lose control, and then I go carefully around that one petal that's overlapping, and I want it really dark up here, and then I'm going to go back into the yellow, put a little bit of the yellow on the tip to lighten, and I'll go back on my towel to lighten the stem as we go down. And now I'm going to rinse out my brush and just fine tune the edge here. And that edge on this side is a little bit darker, so let's put a little bit more of the blue in there, and then let's rinse it out again, and let's get a little bit more of the red, quinacridone red that I have here. A little bit of that, dab my brush, and then let's put a little bit of that red in, just to give it a little oomph. There. So that's how easy it is, and it's a lot of fun. I enjoy painting the stems a lot. So let me show you how I'm going to paint one of the leaves. So again, I'm going to do a similar style as I did with the stems. I'm going to put a little bit of water inside, and I don't go all the way out to the edges. I go into the yellow, transparent yellow, get it on the brush, and put some on the top side of this particular leaf, and it's going to flow into the center of the leaf. And now I'm going to go in and let's put a little bit of Antwerp on the tip, just on the tip of my brush, and let's get a little bit of Antwerp here on the shadow side, and it's going to mix with the yellow and create a really nice green. It's going to be a little bit of a brighter green than we have had so far, because the Antwerp blue leans towards the yellow side, so it creates much brighter greens than the French ultramarine blue. And now I'm dipping in a little bit of French ultramarine blue here on the shadow side, and let's just let that mix and mingle for just a little bit. I can see I got a little carried away here. I got outside here. Pick that up, not that it matters so much. I'm gonna let it just mix and mingle, and see, by using that Antwerp, gives it a little bit more of a sunny, bright yellow. And I'm gonna let it sit for just a moment, and while it sits, let me paint this stem. And that stem, I'm going to take a smaller brush, clean water, go all the way up here, put clean water on, but I stay away from the edges, from the lines that I drew with the permanent ink. And I can continue down here, put a little bit in here, so a little tiny bit of it showing up. So, and here's a extremely tiny area, and then here. So now I have water on the entire stem. I'm going to go to my number 8 brush and do exactly like I did with the other 2 stems. Get a little bit of yellow on first, and I tend to put it on, I do, and I can see I didn't get as much water on, so I better move a little bit faster here, because can you see how the color is not really flowing? So of course I took that smaller brush, it doesn't have as much water on it. So, and then here, get that yellow on the whole way down. And now, if you are a very slow painter, you might want to just do one area at a time and not do the whole stem in one go. And I might regret that I did that, but here we go. Just gonna speed it up. And then here on that one, I'm gonna again not rinse out my brush, put some of that dirty, now it's kind of going green, which is what I wanted to do anyway, French ultramarine on, because I want this stem here to be darker, because it's behind the other stems. I'll be dark here. Be dark there, and so it's going to be a little bit darker, so I might as well use the French ultramarine blue right away, and I make it a little darker right here where it goes underneath, and I get a little bit of the yellow on here so I can make sure I don't get I don't want any hard edges inside my stem, so I'm just smoothing those out while I'm here. And then I can do the same, a little bit more, just on the tip, in this smaller area. And this little area will be very much in the shade, in the shadow. And the same with this little tiny piece down here. So can get that all dark with the French. And then there's a little tiny corner here showing And then here it'll be dark also. So let's get that on. There. Get a little bit darker even here. Dab in a little bit more of that French ultramarine blue while it still spreads on its own. Here, here, here. And it's going to be very dark up here also because there's absolutely no light coming there. Put a little bit of the yellow in because I want it dark green, not dark blue. But you can see how easy it is to mix greens when you use a yellow and then some blues, and you have green automatically. And different kinds of greens depending on what blue you're using. The warmer blue you're using and the warmer yellow you're using, the more muted your greens are going to be, and vice versa. If you have really cool blues, like more like towards the turquoise, they're going to give you really bright greens. And I'm going to rinse out my brush, and before anything dries on me, I'm going to just dab in a little bit of red, and it's going to spread on its own because everything's still wet. So I hope you can see that. And hopefully my little leaf did not dry yet, because I want to take my credit card and then scrape out, yeah, it worked, scrape out a little bit of vein it's called, in the leaf there. And I got a little highlight on there, and I already have a little bit of my pen and ink, so there you have it. So now I can't paint anything that touches this stem because that's still wet. So this stem has to wait. However, I can paint this leaf. So let's do that. Again, you're going to take some clean water, put it inside, don't go all the way out to the edges. And there's that little stem where it attaches. And we can actually, no, let's just stay with that, Eva. I was going to say we could paint this part of the stem, but let's just not get carried away. Let's just take it easy. And I'm going to start with a transparent yellow, put it up here in the top part of the leaf, and let it bleed into the rest of the leaf. And the reason I put it on here first is that's the lightest part of the leaf. So basically I tend to put on the yellow on an area that's going to be the lightest in whatever it is I paint, whether it's the stem or it's a leaf as it is here. Put a little bit more yellow in here, give it a little sunshine. And then here I'm going to put a little bit of that Antwerp on. Start down here where there's that stem, and then we can put it on here. That's also going to be a little bit away from the light as it turns over, and then we're going to let it bleed in. And I'm doing some strokes, just some blending strokes, very soft, in the direction of this leaf. Now I'm going to just dab in a little bit of that French ultramarine blue to darken it. I'm going to darken that tip. Darken it a little bit down here. And just let it slowly blend in. And let that sit for a little bit. And then on that one, once I can see that it's beginning to sink into the paper a little bit, I can take the pointy part of my credit card and then I can just scrape out that rib, that vein that's in the center of the leaf. And because I did it when it was really wet, the pigment runs back in to that little groove, and that creates a dark mark. Over here it was almost dry, so when I scraped out I got a little highlight, and so that's ideal. I like to get a little of this and a little of that. So what will we do? I think we can paint this leaf. Let's do it. And first, let's get some water inside, clean water, and just not go all the way out to the edges. Go in like that. And get some nice, clean, bright, permanent yellow one. I'd like this leaf to be even brighter than that one because it's on top of here, of all these stems and stuff, so then this side will be hit by the light more. So give it a little bit more yellow to start with. And just run down like that. I still have a yellow on here. I'm going to go into my Antwerp blue and just load the tip up. And let's see, I'm just going to turn it around so I don't get my hands in any wet paint if I can help it. And then I'm just catching a little bit of that yellow. And I think I want to put some more yellow on here because I want to keep this light and bright. And a little bit of that Antwerp down there. I'm going to rinse out my brush, dab it so that it's just damp. I'm going to put a little bit of yellow on it. And then I'm just, with the tip of the brush, I'm just encouraging the colors to mix a little bit more. It's quite wet there. And we'll just let that, I'm going to hold it like this so it'll run by itself. And I'd like to keep that very, very light on right on that edge. I think that would be just ideal if we can keep that. Yeah. And while that's kind of settling in, let's put a little bit more dark on this part of the leaf. And I did that with the French ultramarine blue. Just put a little bit of that on my tip of the brush. See how that just gives some nice little texture. I like that. And I think I might just bleed it out here a little bit just so I won't later get like a hard edge like that. This is my favorite way of painting is, you know, put some paint on with lots of water and move your paper around. I swear that does a better job than in brush strokes. Can you see that? And plus it's super fun to watch. So we'll just let that sink in a little bit. And while we wait for that, let's just continue with this leaf up here. Put some clean water in. And then next step, yellow on the lighter side is where we apply it, and then it kind of flows into where I put the water, obviously, and attaches to there. Let's dab in a little bit more yellow here. There. And then I'm not even going to rinse out my brush. I'm going to go over here in the Antwerp, which is pretty much gone green now because, you know, I've already dipped the brush in there with yellow on the tip. That doesn't matter. And then we're going to get the shadow side of the leaf painted, and it bleeds into the yellow, which is what we want. And we'll just connect them there. Then I'm going to go in and grab a little bit of my French ultramarine blue. See if I can catch a little bit of that. And just barely touch my brush so some of it runs into the leaf here on the shadow side. And then I'll let it blend on its own. There. See how lovely that is? And let's take a look at this leaf we painted down here. Grab our credit card. It's still quite wet, so when I scrape, I'll kind of try and hit the pen line I did. But see how nice? Got that little vein in there. And let's put the vein in here too. There. And it's moving right along. Now we have to wait for just a second because this has to dry before I can paint this one. However, I think I can paint that one. Is this one dry? Yeah, it's dry. Just want to make sure you don't paint areas next to each other that are still, you know, if one area is still wet. So here, a little bit of water, clean water on. Make sure we're careful around that little petal. And now here on this particular stem, I'm going to stop where it gets interrupted by that leaf. And that's what I said to you, could have done that here too. And now I'm doing exactly like I've done on all the other stems. Put a little bit of yellow on the sunny side of the stem, down to here. And I'm not going to rinse it out. I'm going to put a little bit of that green with the Antwerp. Put that on my brush, the tip of my brush. I'm going to dab it a little bit. I can see it was a little too much for me to control, be able to control. And I'm going to dab a little bit of that up there because it's going to be darker. The stem's going to be darker here where it disappears under the flower head. And so I'm just dabbing in a little bit of that green. But I want to make sure that I keep this stem lighter where it crosses the other stem underneath. But I'm going to dab in a little bit more Antwerp right underneath here and around this petal that's overlapping. And where it's out in the, I'm going to put a little bit of the French ultramarine blue on too, right up there and down here. And a little bit here, like that. But then I want it to be really light where it crosses over. So we'll do that. And then one more thing I can do is I can give it just a little hint of the red on that side. Just like that. Just makes it a little bit more interesting. Okay, I'll rinse out my brush. And then we need to paint that little area here. There's one little area showing. So I'm starting out, since it's such a small area, I just went straight in with the yellow. And I'm going to get some of that Antwerp green. Put that on the shadow side and let it bleed into the yellow. It needs to be a little darker here because it disappears underneath a stem and a leaf. And just to make sure it matches up, I'm going to put a tiny bit of the red on the tip of my brush here and just do a little dab there. So there's a little repeat of that red. Put a little bit more up there. Just so they are speaking to each other, so to speak. All right. And let's see. Is this dry enough? Yeah. So we can continue with the last part of that stem. Water. There. And then let's get some transparent yellow on. Start on the right side of the stem. Get that on. And all the way down. And then without rinsing out, we're going to put some of that Antwerp green. It's that Antwerp that's turned green because it's been polluted with the transparent yellow. And so make sure it matches what's on that side of the stem. And then we're just going to drag it down, all the way down. Get some more Antwerp on here. Get a little bit more. Just clean up a little bit. Dab in. Maybe a little bit there. And I really like how that looks. So I don't even need to do anything to that, I don't think. But I am going to go in, get a little bit of that quinacridone red on my brush and just go in and get a couple of reds in, just like that. And I rinsed out my brush, and then I'm just going to try and smooth it out just a little bit, not too much. And then here I want to just do like that. And then I think I'm going to take a little bit of French ultramarine blue on the tip of my brush here, and just to darken down here. And maybe darken a little bit here, a little bit here, and a little bit here. Not too much, because I want it lighter than the one that's underneath. There. I have too much fun painting these stems, so it's hard for me to stop. But less is more, I have to remind myself. So now all we have left is this stem and that leaf, and we have to wait for the other stems to dry before we can continue with that. Okay, it's dry and ready to paint the last stem and the last little leaf. So let's get the water on the stem. It's interrupted here by that leaf. And as usual, we shall start with the transparent yellow. Put it on the sunny side. And we need to get a little bit up here too, around that sepals there. And let's go in and get the Antwerp blue that's now turned green because it's been contaminated with the yellow, but since I'm using it for greens, it doesn't matter. So put it over here. So when you paint the stems and the leaves in this manner, you don't have very much tweaking to do later on. There'll be a little bit of push and pull where we need to darken a few areas and maybe lighten a couple of areas. But in general, it should be pretty well done. Get a little bit more water on, a little bit more the Antwerp blue, because I want it really dark up here. Because it's behind those sepals, and they're also green, so we need to distinguish. So let's put a little bit of the French ultramarine blue on also to make it really dark. That's the blue that's going to give you the darkest and most saturated green, not super bright. And see, I'm skipping with the dark right there where it's crossing over that other stem. And then here I also need to keep it a little bit lighter than the stem underneath. And I can do that also by putting a little red in. Want it kind of dark there. Kind of dark here would be good. Of course it goes under that leaf. And it goes under that leaf, so it needs to be darker than that leaf. I'm going to take a little bit of red and put some red in here. And now I'm going to rinse it out, the brush. And I can see it's already drying on me, so I just go over with a damp brush and just kind of unify a little bit. There, and I want it really dark down here on this part. So yeah, that worked out okay. I need to get a little bit dark there. I like that. Can you see, you know, you have to always tell what's on top, what's below, and light and warm brings forward, dark and cool pushes back. And I think with a thirsty brush, I'm just going to lift out just a hint there. Do you see that? It just kind of brings it forward. Okie dokie. Then we just have the leaf left. And we'll put a little bit of water inside. It's not touching anything wet, so we're okay. Down like that. And then let's get our yellow one. The yellow has been polluted a little bit too. It's okay. Just run it down there. I think I'll rinse my brush out and just get a little bit more yellow on here, just so I can really get some yellow on that part of the leaf that's, you know, reaching for the light. Painting that. And let's get some Antwerp blue on down here and here. And now it has to be lighter, of course, than what it's crossing over. So we can put a little dark on right here. That would be good. And a little bit down here, maybe. Put a little bit there. And then I'm going to rinse my brush out. And then I'm going to just with the tip of a damp brush here, just smooth it out a little bit. And I think I'll put a little bit more yellow right in the tip here. Make that a little bit more sunny. There we go. And let's let that just have a chance to sink in a little bit. And I think I'll pull out with a thirsty brush. That means a clean, barely damp brush. Let's pull out a little bit right there so that it's lighter. I think I might even put a little bit more of that yellow in there, just to warm that up. Can you see? There we go. Let that dry for just a second, and then I'm going to take our trusted credit card and just scrape out that vein there. And voila, we have all the stems and the leaves painted. Now comes the super fun, and that is painting in the heads of the flowers, all the petals. So that's going to be a blast. So I've been playing around a little bit in my sketchbook here, deciding on a color scheme for the various flowers, and I think I'll do these two here in glowing oranges, and then these three here are going to be more in the purple pink realm. And whatever colors you would like to do, just go for it. You can see here again, that's kind of like the color scheme I had in mind. So keep these two kind of orangey, and then these here more purple pink, and leave the centers here more yellow orange, and then these centers here I'll do darker, a real rich dark purpley. So there we have it. Let's get our colors ready. So for starting out with the ones that I'm gonna do in the warm, glowy, orangey, yellow color scheme, I'm gonna start with a light glaze of transparent yellow to kind of get that underpainting going. So that's going to be the lightest part of these flowers up here. So we'll give them a glaze, and it's going to treat the whole flower in one go. For this first go around, so I'm just putting a little water inside all the petals, and I'm starting with this one. Have a little bit of yellow on my brush still. And as always, I don't go all the way out to the edge of the lines, because then things have a tendency to creep past. So here we go. Let's just put that yellow in to get started, and be careful. Always careful as you want to be. I mean, you can also be more loose if you like. It's all up to you. So put that transparent yellow in. And so it's very diluted, because transparent yellow really is a transparent color. It's a PY pigment yellow 150. And there's no white in this yellow. That's why I love it so much. And it really, really glows. And it's super heavy pigment load. So you need a lot of water and not very much pigment. Sorry, I'm turning it around because that way I don't get my hands in wet paint. And here. So that's, you know, a very easy first step. Just glaze the whole thing in a unifying color, in this case yellow. And there we have it. Rinse out my brush. And I'm going to have a thirsty brush. I'm going to just lift out a little bit on those parts that are going to be the lightest. So some of the tops here can lift out a little bit of that yellow. I've got it all outside the line here, not that it matters that much. There we go. There. So there it already has, you know, color on. Let's do the same with this one back here. I have a little bit of yellow left on my brush, doesn't matter since that's the color I'm gonna paint. And then let's go in here, get our beautiful transparent yellow on all the petals. And we'll do the same as we did in the other one. We're going to just lift out a little bit here and there for some extra highlight. So this one will be a little bit lighter. And this one. And then probably this one and this one. Here. There you go. So we already got some color on there. For this cone head, I want, and then these here, I want them to be in the pink/purple realm. So I'm going to get some permanent rose. You can also use quinacridone rose if that's what you have on your palette. And I'm going to do the same thing. Wet all the petals, a little bit of water, and now I'm just going to go in with a fairly thin, watered down, permanent rose. Just going to go around the stamen area here, center of the flower. That's where the colors are going to be the darkest. So I'm going to go in here. And then I'm going to get a little bit more water on my brush and pull the color out to the edge of the petals. And again, I'm not going to worry too much about what's what in this go around. Just get some color on. That's going to be the lightest color on the petals. And we're going to go in later and build up the colors and separate the petals as we build the depth and the shadow areas. But for now, this is good. And let's rinse out our brush, wipe it, and then go in with a thirsty brush and just pick up a couple of areas where you think you'd like to have a little bit of a highlight. So again, we have our light coming from up here, and that means the light's going to hit some of these tops, these petals. There we go. That's good enough. And see, it already has a little bit of shape on it. So for the little buds, I think I'm going to go with a smaller brush. This is my number 4. And I'm going to go to my permanent rose here. And since these are much smaller areas, I think I'm just going to go in on dry and get that little bit of color on. And I'm going to start with those petals peeking up in the back. And put those, get them painted first. And I'll do the same on this other one, giving them a little bit more intensity of color. There. These over here on this side, I'm going to keep them a little bit lighter because they'll be hit by light. Maybe lift out a little bit there. The tips there. Okay. And let's rinse out my brush, and I can go to the ones in front, get color on them, and again using my permanent rose for this step. And we can continue over here. There. And so now we got all the petals painted with the first glaze. So while we let the petals dry, let's paint all these sepals that we have around the flower buds that are not quite open yet. So I mix myself a very light springy green from my transparent yellow and the Antwerp blue. So I'm just going to give them a very light coat of this very springy green. So there we have it. And we're going to do the same on this one here. And again, this is just a glaze. It's just the first layer, the lightest color on these sepals here. And we'll build them up later on. But now we have color on everything in our painting. And I always find that helpful. Then I can kind of start splitting up and building the volume. So now that this is dry, I can go in and put on another layer of color on the petals here. So first I'm going to start with the ones that are in the back, and I'm using my Aussie Gold, and I'm putting on that Aussie Gold in the corner like that in a little V, and then with a clean damp brush I'm going to pull that color out like this. So that's the first step I'm going to do. And then that's, so I find all the little petals that are peeping out from behind and giving them that orange glow, and that'll separate them from the petals in the front. And we'll get to them later. But this is just, step one. Find it easier to do it this way. It kind of gives me a like a road map for how I want to tackle these flowers, and it just, before we know it, it's going to be all beginning to take shape and volume. So, and I like to leave the tips quite light because they're still going to get some of that sunlight. And then this one back here, put a little bit of that Aussie Gold, Aussie Red Gold it is, on like that, and then with a damp brush, not dripping wet, just damp, I can let that flow out and lose the edge. Let's give it a little bit more oomph here. See how slowly but surely. And then here, we can see the back side, and then we can see inside. So underneath here, I give it a very, very, very thin little line of that Aussie gold. And then I'm going to rinse out my brush, my number 4 brush, because you know the number 8 that I was using to lose the edge, that's too big. And so now I have a damp brush, and I can just, before it dries, I can just gently, gently lift and move that color, you know, lose the edge and move that color a little bit. Like that. And then we're going to let it dry. And we do the exact same thing on the top one. So let's see here. We have one here. And here I can do a couple at the same time. Just give them a little bit of that orange, Aussie red gold in those little corners here. And then I take my number 8 brush, have it clean and damp, and I'm just going to pull out that pigment so that it transitions into a lighter orange on these petals that are behind. Don't want to go too dark too early. You can always go dark, but here's a little sliver, and then here, and then I want to do this one a little bit. Pull this one out a little tiny bit, and then this one like that. And then we also have a little corner there. I'm going to leave that for now. I think there's a little something going on in here. There you see it. And I had one more that I wanted to get something dark on. This one here. And I'm going to rinse out my number 4 brush and just pull out a little bit of color here if I can. There. Okay. Can you see how it's like building up a little bit? And next step is we can do something similar on this one. So for the coneflower here that I'm going to keep more in the pink / purple rain, I'm going to make myself a pink that's a little bit darker by adding on a little bit of the permanent magenta. So I have a nice rich dark but still pink color. And let's go in and find the little dark areas. There's a dark area there. That's just peeping out. There. And then I want to just treat the back side of these petals here as one shape for right now. And so I'm just giving them a little bit of that dark color, and then I'm going to pull it out like that. And there's also going to be some of that dark color here in some of these little nooks and crannies. And I'm just going to go in the direction of the petals and pull it out that way. So now we already got a little bit more shape on them. And let's find some of those other little dark areas. There's a little one here. It's hiding in here. Let's give that some darkness. This one behind here. And this one behind here is going to be darker. And then rinse our brush out. And then on these little guys, we can go in and do a little bit more. Just closer to the center of the flower, it's going to be darker because, you know, it goes down. Loose the edge. Make sure you rinse out your brush so you don't keep transferring pigment, but you really do lose the edge. So really dark area there, and then underneath that one. So we're just trying to separate the petals a little bit. Start giving this flower some more depth. So find all the little petals that are behind, peeking out from under another petal. They will be darker. Can you see how it starts taking shape when you do that? So you always have to, I always have this like a mantra. Dark pushes back, light brings forward. Dark pushes back, light brings forward. So you just have to decide which petal is in front. That'll be lighter, and you know, the petal that's behind will be darker. And of course, remember your light source. My light source is coming from here. And these back here, again, have to decide which one is sticking up more than the others. You know, give them a little texture. That'll already give these some more character back here. And then this one here will be a little lighter as it peeks out. All right, so I'm pretty happy with that for now. So let's go in and work on our little flower buds. So let's just zoom in a little bit, and then I'll work on the buds. So I made my puddle here with my permanent rose that has been darkened with a little bit of permanent magenta, and I'm just gonna put that in here at the bottom of these little petals here at the back. You can actually do a few at a time. Dab in the pigment just at the bottom, and do a little bit more here. It's maybe a little timid. Rinse out my brush, and then gently pull that up and loosen the edge so that the bottoms are darker and the tops are lighter of these petals in the back. Of course, they're going up towards the light, so they'll be a little lighter. And there'll be a lot of rinsing out your brush so that you don't, you know, get them all dark. There. So these are tiny little areas, but there. And then we can do the exact same thing with the same color at the bottom here. So I'm going to do this one, loose the edge, and keep a little highlight on that side. Dab in a little bit more. Okay. And I'll skip the next one because they're going to, you know, run together. And then I'm going to go over on this one, and I think I can do 2 at a time, maybe even 3. Wow. You don't have to do that if you feel that that's a little too much. And then I'm going to just blend it out, get a soft edge, disappear. And I need a little bit more dark here. And a little bit more here. Just at the bottom. And then pull it up. And make sure you keep those tips lighter. And then we can jump over to this one here. Do the same exact thing. Rinse my brush, dab it on the towel, and then pull it up. And on this last little one, there. There we go. And then I'm just missing this one I skipped. There. A little bit of that darker pink color, and then lift it out. Okay. So give them a little bit more shape, and we'll do the same with this one over here while we have that color. So dark at the bottom, and then we go back in and soften it out, that edge. Make sure you rinse your brush out so that you don't keep transferring that darker pink color all the way up. Yeah. And we'll do on this one, on this one, on this one, and on that one. Make sure I don't. There we go. Soften it. And we can do the same at the bottom of these little petals down here. I'll just do them all at one go. See how I fare with that. And just pull them up. And then this little guy there. And then we have the second go around on those petals. So let's get a real dark on those sepals we have around the little flower buds. And so I already got some more of my Antwerp blue and my transparent yellow. And I'm going to take a hint of this orange, reddish orange I have over here, and get that in to take the green from too, super bright to a little bit more muted and dark. And I was back on the towel, and then let's go in and really get them dark at the bottoms. Again, everything's at the bottoms. Go out a little bit here. And especially here, the ones that are towards the light, get it at the bottoms and on the underside. And we still want to leave those highlights on the top of them. And then here, on those that are away from the light, we can darken a little bit more on the side away from the light. And now I'm dabbing and cleaning my brush, and I'm just going to go in and, as usual, soften and loosen those hard edges. And let's do the ones on this one as well. At the bottom and then away from the light. Rinse my brush, dab it, and loose the edge. And they'll be a little darker over here on this side, where they're away from the light. There. Okay, so I have one more I want to fix here, because I feel that, make sure it's dry, and then you know, the stem that I can see in between the sepals here, I need to darken that because right now they're pretty much the same color. So I am going to go back to my orange flowers here, and now I'm going to go in with the quinacridone red, and I'm just going to take a hint of that orange, and I'm going to go in to the darkest areas and build up the layer one more time, just to really get that dark where I need it. And there. And let's loose the edge. And loose the edge here. And the same here. And here. And remember to clean your brush. Of course, now there's a lot of pigment, and also have a very light touch, because now we have quite a few glazes on, layers of paint on, and we don't want to risk lifting up. I'm also going to put in a little bit here. We don't want to risk lifting up the layers of pigment and color below, because that's going to be a mess. We don't want a mess. Alright, that worked out very well. So let's do the same thing over here. Getting pretty close to having the layers built up the way we need to. Let's give it a little bit in here. There. And then clean brush, loose the edges. I think we're pretty good. And then right here I wanted to just separate a little bit here, because this petal is going under right here. So I think I want to go around and just separate a little bit more in between these other petals. And so just put a little bit of color on, and I'm using that reddish orange to indicate what petal is on top and which one is underneath. And keep flipping my paper around, because, you know, I don't want to get my hand in the wet pigment. And I'm just trying to take a look and seeing where do I have areas where it's not really clear which one is on top, which one is below or underneath. So I want to make sure I got all that taken care of. Just want to give this a little bit more shape to the individual petals too. There. So now I think we can go down to this pink one down here and give it one more layer. So to get one more layer on this pink/purple coneflower, we are going to get some more of our permanent magenta out, and then we are going to darken that with a little bit of Antwerp blue. That was too much. I don't want it that blue. I want it still to be a little bit of a warmer purple. I think we're getting pretty close. A little bit more. There. That's what I had in mind. Okay. here it goes. You turn it upside down. I want to go in. Oops, I can see I have a drop. You've got to watch out. When you have drops on your ferrule there, that can spell disaster. So now go into all those dark areas again. Okay, rinse out my brush and get back to them while I can and loose the edge. And there we have it. I just need to loose all these edges. And you know, I've said it many times, but make sure you clean that brush in between, otherwise you're going to just be dragging all this pigment all over the place, and you don't really want that. I'm going to go in and just darken even more right here. These little areas are going to be very, very dark. There. Clean my brush. Just kind of fuss that out. There we have it. So now we're going to give a little bit more character to these petals, and you can see when we look at them closely, you know, they have a lot of folds and stuff, so we haven't really indicated that yet. So let's be brave and see if we can do something about that. So we go in, we put a little bit of a line on, maybe we put 2 on, and I don't go all the way down, and then I'm going to loose the edge on one side of these little lines, again with a clean brush. And can you see that we are creating some of those little folds? So that was kind of fun. Let's do it again. So I think I can do one more right here, a little one. The key is don't do it the whole way. Just indicate a couple of places that they have those folds, and you'll be good. I'll do a little bit up, you know, here at the bottom. It's kind of fun to do too. So, you know, you can spend some time doing this. There's lots of things that can be done on these little guys, but we're not going to go crazy, we hope. And also make sure that they are in the right, you know, direction, the direction of how these petals grow and how they are folded and stuff. Otherwise it's going to look really strange. Can you see how they're getting a little bit of a groove? And you can vary the color. The color I used here was a little bit of a darker orange that we've used previously. So you can also use one that's a little bit lighter. And make sure you have a nice tip on your brush so they're just not too fat. And sometimes you don't even need to loose the edge. I made them so faint on that one. And you can also do it on a couple of these that are behind, even though you won't see too much on those. And again, make sure you loose the edge so they're not like too harsh. Few more here. I like it if I get a couple going up this way actually. So let's do it. And again, loose the edge. Same here, loose the edge. I think that's pretty much enough, except for one place, and I need to go even darker there, so I'm hopping over here into even a little bit of the permanent rose. Let's do a little bit on this little guy from the inside All right, I like that. So, and if you don't like it, of course, you know, there's no obligation to do it, but I think that really gives him a little bit more pizzazz. You could spend hours doing this. We don't have to. And so I really like that. And of course, then I'm going to repeat it on this one here, since this one's not as much focal area. I'm not going to spend quite as much time on the individual petals here. There. I think that's good. Okay. I don't really think I want to do it on this one down here, because this is my focal area and I think I have done enough with the details down here. So I'm going to leave those alone, and the same with these. I think I did enough. It's always a matter of, you know, don't overdo it, don't tell too much. That's really what it boils down to. So now I took a little tiny bit of that purple I built over there and I put it over in the orange here. And then I'm going to go in and do just a couple darker markings here on those petals where I see the back side, and much darker there, you know, on the other side of the flower. And so I'm just putting a few of those in there, and again, loose the edge, loose the edge, loose the edge. And I think I can even do a little bit here maybe. And then a couple here, very faint. There. That's it. I think we are ready to put the last coat of color on our stamen areas here, the centers of our coneflowers, or center coneflowers. I wanted to get my little masking pen ready and put the last little coat of masking fluid on. There's not many empty areas left, it doesn't feel like. And so up here also, just want to save some of these oranges, some little lines, some little dots, mainly on the sunny side. So that's on the right hand side, at least in my painting. Just to make sure we save some of that. We can always go in and darken a little bit if we have to. If we got too much masking fluid on, I have no idea how this is going to work out, but time will tell. So let that dry, and then the color we're going to put on is going to be permanent magenta. So we'll put some of that over here. There. And we want it quite concentrated. Here we are. And then we do have some of that little bit darker permanent magenta that we darkened up with our Antwerp blue. So put a little Antwerp blue up there and put a little bit more in here. There we have it. I think my masking fluid is already dry. So here goes nothing. We start out with a permanent magenta. So it's going to look more brownish on top of all this orange, which is totally fine. And I'm actually going to go in while it's still wet and dab in some of that really dark with a Antwerp blue in it, so it's a really dark purple. And let's rinse that out and then just go back in with just some straight permanent magenta and do this side, the lighter side with that, and then let them just blend. It's exciting. So I'm going to take my little tiny brush and I'm just going to soften some edges down here like that with just barely damp brush, and I'm going to pull out a little bit, clean my brush again and just drag down and use some of this here as a little additional shadow right in those little areas where it would be extra dark, just to give it a little bit more pizzazz and blend it. And then I'm going to make sure it has a really nice tip, and I'm gonna just pull out some little hairs, some little stamens while it's still damp. So it takes very light touch, and a good tip on your brush. That's what is required for this. So there, pretty good. Look at that, I like it. So that's still very wet. And I can see it just traveled down too far here. Didn't want that. Just gonna lift that out. There. Take another piece. There. I don't want to go overboard. Well, that was super fun. Let's do it again with a magenta. And you can see I'm just kind of dabbing it in around those petals. And now I'm going to pick up that really dark version of the permanent magenta, make it even darker, and down here at the bottom. There. And then rinse it out, and then I'm going to go in with a pure permanent magenta and combine it similar to what I did on that one. And again, you can see because of the orange underneath, it looks a little bit more on the brown side, which is ideal. And I'm gonna get some more of that dark and just kind of dot it in there. And now I'm gonna rinse my brush and get a really nice tip on it, no drips, no. And then I'm going to pull out these little hairs, these little stamens, and try very hard not to get my hand in the paint, the wet paint. Try not to hold your breath while you do that. I just noticed myself, I'm holding my breath. And I want to also put a little bit that fuzziness down here. I think it's all going to help it tie together nicely. There we are. Okay, gotta have to let it dry, but I think it looks pretty good. And I kind of got encouraged with that color there, and so I think I want to darken a little bit here, just like that. Soften it a little bit. Okay, we gotta let it dry, then we can take the masking off. That's gonna be the exciting part. Okay, I think the time has come. Let's see what we got. I'm gonna use this rubber cement eraser or masking fluid picker-upper to take the masking fluid off. So make sure I get it all off. Yeah, I think that's it. And over here, there we have it. See, we're getting those highlights. And then on this purple flower, coneflower, there. Yeah, I think they are dry enough. I mean, we put so much pigment on here. And there's so many layers of masking fluid that... See, I'm going in one direction. Don't go like scrubbing back and forth just in case, you know, you might smear. There's still masking, you know, there's paint on top of all that masking fluid, so we don't want to risk smearing anything. All right, you've definitely built up many layers and all those different colors that we have put on. So that's the whole point of doing it this way. I think that's it. All right, so that looks pretty good, I think. And now, of course, that doesn't mean that that's the end of it. Now we want to go in with the last darks and just fine tune the stamen centers, so the cones there, here and here, and maybe throw in a dark or two in between the petals. I think this one's pretty much done, but let's take a look and see what we think. So for that fine tuning of these little stamen centers, stamen heads, I don't know what you call them, it's time to go in and get our finest little detail brush. So I had to dig into my supplies because I hardly ever use these little tiny brushes. But let's go in. And so what I put on was, I put that really dark purple on. I want to do these here first. And so I'm just going to go in and do some more of those little hairs, dark hairs. Just, you know, to break up these light areas, because with all that masking fluid we put on, I mean, and you can't, you know, when you put it on, as you're building up the layers, you can't see the masking fluid that's already there and how it all comes out. So you always will have a little bit of fixing to do, fine tuning, trying to get a really good tip on this brush. So the finer tip you can get on your brush, the better. So just want to break up all these little areas. And of course these little brushes, they don't hold much pigment or water. So you have to go back often and reload. And so I roll my brush and make sure I get a good fine tip on it, and just go in and break up some of these little areas where it's, you know, too much light or it's the wrong shape. Again, remember to breathe, I say as I'm holding my breath. As a reminder to myself and to you, let's not forget to breathe. And I will pull out a few little areas over the petals also, to kind of, especially over here on the shadow side, because might be some little shadows cast. And I'll put a little bit more dark on this side here and at the bottom. So now I'm just kind of dabbing in. Yeah, I think that looks about right now. Just take care of some of those. All right. We'll call that one done, and then we'll go in and do the same on this one over here, and especially over here on the shadow side, make sure that, you know, it's not as highlighted as this side where the light's hitting it. So constantly have to load up your brush, because it's so tiny, even though the one I have here is Kolinsky brush, and, you know, dug it out of my brush drawer. I haven't used it for God knows how long. But I thought, you know, it should probably hold a little bit more pigment than my regular brushes, a little detail brush, but I don't know if that holds true. A little bit more shadow down here on this side. So I just have a little bit more watered mix, so once it dries, it's still going to show those highlights, but just not as bright on this side here. There. I think that's pretty good. This side here, I actually want them to look more greenish, so I'm gonna the highlights, I want the highlights a little bit more green, so I put a little bit of light green on. Get that in between here. I think that works pretty well. I want the same on this other one. I can go do a little darker down here. And then finally this one, and I have the same idea here. I want to get a little green in on these here because I just went out in my garden, I looked at them, and some of these they actually have kind of green at the tips more than yellow and orange. So let's get that in. I have it. And I'm going to make myself a real dark. So I'm going to dip into my purple here and over here in my green puddle. I'm trying to get almost a black, but made from the colors that I already have in the painting. That's always best. Okay, I think I'm good. So then I'm going to go in and dab a little bit of these darks in, especially on the shadow side, and then here where they're cast a little bit of a shadow. And so get a little bit of those in here too, especially on the shadow side. And go down here, help bring out some of those little petals that are unfolding in the front by putting a little bit more dark in between them. And we'll do the same over here, dot in a little bit of that dark, and then go in, just kind of pull out a little bit of that darkness here from the bottom. And let's rinse that out, and let's go in and take a little bit of this very light green and just put a little bit on the shadow side here, just for a little extra oomph. Yeah. And then I'm going to go in with a little bit of the permanent magenta and just deepen a little bit, put a little bit of shadow in on those petals that are in the background here. And you can even do some little line work if you want. And do the same on this one. And this is just to give it a little bit more drama. And then on this one and on the back side here. There we have it. And let's see, what else could we possibly think of? Well, we could think of just lifting out a few highlights, a couple of places if we feel the need to. So a little bit on the stem there, and I could put a little bit of yellow in just to brighten it up. I could lift out a little bit here, dab, and I could lift out a little bit here on the stem and put a little bit of a yellow one just to give it a little pizzazz. Oh, and then let's see, make a real dark green with whatever I have left in the palette. This is a great, time to use up all this stuff you have here. Of course, then you're sure that you're staying with the color theme that you already have. You could darken a little bit here just to bring a little bit more contrast, and the same here. Put a little bit on this and rinse out your brush. Make sure you don't leave any weird hard edges. And down here, already did that one. This little area here, that. And I see one other little area that could be a little darker, and that's here. Rinse out my brush. There we go. And darken this little stem down here. Could lighten a little bit on this area. Put a little bit of a yellowish green on. We could darken right here. Like that. And then I think it would be, this one is a little solid. It's lift out a highlight right here across where the light would hit this leaf. These are just subtle little things, and this is just you know, just to finish it off. That's what I usually like to go around and do in my paintings. Just kind of find those little areas that could need a little lift or a little push. So either lift a little bit of color out or darken in a few areas, or both. All depending what I find is necessary. And this is not strictly necessary, but I think it is an improvement. So there we go. I think pretty much we've said what we wanted to say with this one here. I could put in a little bit of darkness a couple of places. I mean, even darker. A couple of places here. Just to give this one a little bit more pizzazz. It's not necessary. But since I'm teaching you a class, I should go out on a limb for you and show you how far we can push this. We're getting pretty close to absolutely done. You know, there's also the time where whatever else you do is not an improvement, it takes away. And that's, you know, can be hard to find out what that point is. But I think we're getting pretty close. So why don't we just lift out a couple more little highlights here. Right on the top of these couple of petals, I think would be good. And then call it a day. There. We'll call this done. So that wraps up my demo on the coneflowers. I hope you have a lot of creative fun with this. Happy painting!